Hey everyone, welcome to the District Learning Day virtual IPA unit planning from quick summary to assessment tasks. I'm Kayla Cardio, Spanish teacher at Fulton High School, and I've been working this summer with the teams to develop the new curriculum. So without further ado, because I don't want to waste your time, here's what's going to be going on in this little video. We're going to start with an overview of the vision and the changes that are going on this school year, and then we'll go into tips for assessment building, and then those of us that are not doing this virtually will have some work time to actually build assessments. What you all get out of that. So, first, themes. We've got some themes this year. This is not a rigid curriculum. You've got a lot of autonomy this year. So first, let me show you just kind of what I'm talking about. Is this level 1 or 2? Sure. Level 1. So for example, we've got 4 major themes going on. And we've so far worked on levels 1 and 2. This is what the whole presentation will be based on. Modern languages, levels 1 and 2. Let's let that load for a second. So hopefully you can see some of that. It's not scooted over very well in my little box. We've got who am I? There we go. My home, my life and world, which is basically what I do. My school. I think there's a travel theme as well in level 2. You can see kind of basically home and family, foods, blah, blah, blah. So we're going to base it on themes. You can teach these themes in any order. You can do whatever makes sense to you. You can work what you already do into these themes. It should be nice. We've always at every training talked about there's too much vocab, there's too much vocab. And now, hopefully, we will have more autonomy to teach the vocabulary we want to teach and things like that. So let me show you. Keep going back to where I was. How we've even broken it down more from those broad themes into, I should show you the level 2 themes, I guess, too. Again, who am I, my town, my world, and then, yeah, there's the travel. So level 2, and then you see those little subtopics within each theme. Don't worry about all this because I'll show you where you can find all this information, so don't try to jot everything down. But there will be subtopics as well. So let me show you where you can get to those. Kind of show you what I'm talking about. And again, all this is going to be on the website, the World Language page, under the For Teachers section. You'll have access to all of this, so don't scramble to write it down. So on our subtopics, we've got, here we go, a sketch of the curriculum in English. Just a little more detailed broken down. Again, you can teach this in the order that you would like. Within the theme, whatever themes in whatever order. These are standalone themes. And so the great thing is just so much autonomy. If you're freaking out about so much autonomy, don't worry, because we also have a lot of suggested things that you can use so that you do have more structure if you like that, if the idea of having more autonomy makes you a little nerviosa. So here you can see level 1 suggested themes. So we've got our topics, myself. So here's some vocabulary you might need in that topic, and I just moved it. Whoops. Forgive me, this is not my strong suit. So structures, I am, I have, those super 7, super 10 verbs. Some questions that go along with that unit that we'd like them to be able to respond to. So you've got the topics there. And like I said, you have access to these and you can read, so I'm not going to waste your time there. But below that, you remember your 6-page vocabulary list you used to have? Let's see what we've got now besides a blank screen, because the internet in Knox County is awesome. Did I just whine on a public thing? Maybe I shouldn't do that. I just saw it. Come on. I apologize. I'm pretty informal. Oh, here we go. Nope, that's still themes. Where's our vocab? Oh, look. Look at our 1-page vocabulary list. Oh. Okay. So, potential notice vocabulary, suggested essential vocabulary. Listen to all this autonomy. So the students are going to generate the rest of your vocabulary. Here's your, kind of where we want to be, but we don't have a list of, stepbrother and ex-brother-in-law and 9,000 things and scarf and oyster and words that they might not use all the time. Instead, we've got the basics here, and then your students can generate the words that they want to know from there. And the way I'm personally going to do this is they'll have this list, per module, per theme. I'll give them their list, and then half the paper will be blank, and they'll just fill in words that they know, that they've, looked up, that they want to know, because one child might want to know chess, and the other one wants to know rugby, and, depending on what they're doing, that's the vocabulary vocabulary that they can learn. So 1 page of vocabulary. I'm hoping that that excites you all. Let's move on. Back to where we were. In level 2, I kind of already showed you the topics are in there. I'm not sure if they have a vocabulary list. I was more on the level 1 page. And I will scoot this back over so you don't have to look at that ugliness. So there's our topics we're going with, our suggested vocab. Suggested, look at all that. Now we're going to talk about a resource share. I think the hardest part about this shift is that there are a ton of resources out there. There really are. The authentic resources as well. I mean, obviously there's a whole Spanish-speaking world or French-speaking world, etc. Out there with resources for you to use. The problem is taking the time to find them. So I think the best way to do that is with a resource share where we just pool our resources, because it does take time, and that for me is like the scariest part. I have 3 kids under 4, and I don't want to spend 2 hours a night digging on Pinterest. So, if you'll send an email to kayla.cardio@knoxschools.org and let me know what language you teach, we're going to do language-specific Google Team drives. I can show you what that looks like. And then I'll lose all my stuff, but I'll do that in a second. And it's just going to be broken down by language and by topic. And so you'll say, okay, I teach French 2, you'll go into the French 2 folder. We're talking about travel, so you'll go into the travel folder, and then you should find, infographics, itineraries, websites. There'll be a whole document for websites. The biggest thing about a team drive that scares me, if you have the ability, if you have the access to add things to it, that means you also have the ability to edit things, which is wonderful, until someone worked hard on something and you go in and edit it. Without making a copy first. So please, pretty please check, and I'm going to try to go in and type at the top of everything I've already put in there to please make a copy. This is the original, and copy it to your own drive before you start editing away on, say, an IPA that someone worked on really hard. So it's great, and we just need to learn. There's a little learning curve. We've got to use it the right way. Hopefully we've been part of a team drive before. And lastly, so Kayla.cardio, send me your name. And it might take me a couple days to find the right person to add you to theirs. But hopefully that will be a huge burden lifted off of you, because you can go and look at, okay, I'm doing food in level 1. I'm going to go to, German 1 in the food folder, and boom, some people have already put up some great infographics or whatever for me, or menus, blah, blah, blah. So next new for this year is our gradebook categories. And let's see. These are a little flexible. I meant to highlight some of these, but the main thing is that in place of the EOC, 20% of their grade will be the summative category, which is made up of our IPAs, our Integrated Performance Assessments. Oh, no, integrated it says. This is why you should spell check before you present things. Integrated. Nope, still can't type. Okay, so these are 3 to 5. I think we'll do 4, right, because there are 4 themes in both Spanish, or level 1 and level 2. I say Spanish, that's my default. So throughout the year, they'll assess all modes of communication and collectively make up this IPA grade. So it won't be this one test at the end of the year. It will be 4, quote, IPAs that they take throughout the year, and the average of those will be 20% of their grade. I'm going to show you some samples in a second. So again, this is in place of the EOC. I've already created some IPAs in there for you. You can feel free to copy first, download first, right, and then edit them, make them your own. You say, I don't like this part, I like this part, or I'm just going to use it as a template. That's totally fine. It just needs to, assess those modes of communication. What can they actually do with the language? So it should be really exciting. And we've also got rubrics so that you can grade them in a way that makes sense and it assesses what level they're actually at. Are they at novice mid? Are they at intermediate high, etc.? So 20% of their grade will be made up of, okay, this is where everyone's freaking out. I understand. You're like, oh my gosh, you're mandating how I do my grades. This is flexible. 20% summative, that can be changed. Obviously everyone in the district has to be the same. But you've got some flexibility here in what these mean. You can work things that you already do into these categories. For example, I was freaking out about 20% of a grade being homework. I work in the inner city, and a lot of my students have jobs, and I just knew that was going to be an issue for them, and I'm sorry all these things are popping up. There we go. So you've got some leeway to make this your own. I'm choosing to put homework with classwork. and then participation on its own. And my participation, I know we've had some concerns like we're focusing on what they can do with the language. You know, well, I don't want 20% of their grade being participation and just being a good student. Well, personally, I'm doing the participation as their every 4 times throughout the year, since there are 4 modules, 4 themes. Then they will do a self-assessment, a bigger self-assessment. We might also have weekly ones. A lot of you do daily points, things like that. But there will be a bigger, more in-depth self-assessment, as well as I will take like 2 or 3 students a day, probably 2 students a day, and secretly assess them as well and their participation and things like that. And I have a TA who will also do that. So they should have 3 people in my class, or you could just assess more than 1 person a day. And those assessments on their participation will be the only thing that goes in that category. It won't be just like, oh, busy work. But you can do it how you want. So you've got some leeway to change these percentages here. Like I'm doing, like I said, homework with classwork, participation on its own, things like that. But 20% summative, and hopefully our grades will be more uniform across the board. Formative assessments would be things like vocab and grammar quizzes, which I'm going to try to make just basically a smaller version of an IPA. Such like it would have an interpretive section, it would have maybe an interpersonal section, etc. And then I'm going to make classwork things like when we do movie talks and have questions about those, and when we do like readings or anything like that. We write letters to our pen pals, blah, blah, blah. A lot of times my assessment might have a piece where I'm measuring their oral proficiency. So, come up to me and tell me what you're going to do this weekend. And then on the project, they might just take what they already did and just expand upon that. Or, formative assessment of speaking, tell me about your family. And now for a project, take that, expand on it, make me a family album or a video of your family. I don't know. Take it and make it a little more rehearsed and polished, where I would pay more attention to how correct it is instead of is it on the fly. Are they getting their point across? Am I measuring proficiency or performance? So again, those are the new changes coming down the pipe. And so nothing like finding out a couple days before we start, right? So let's move on from there and get into the meat of this presentation. So I said after we did the overview of the vision, we would do some tips for assessment building. That was what scared me the most. So it says using quick summaries, and some of us are like, using what? So basically it's just a unit plan, which is just new lingo. We're always changing the ways what we call things. And I want to show you that on the world language page, where you have to actually go log in under for world language teachers, you do have access to all this. Here's your example parent letter, an example syllabus already written for you. Just change everything in there. We still have our old curriculum down here because those are amazing. There's tons of resources with it. But we've got our actful can-do statements. Those are our objectives basically already there for us. Here's level 1, level 2. So let's look at travel in level 2, and we'll see and then all our rubrics are here. I should show you that. Sorry, squirrel. So interpersonal, let's just take a look at our rubrics because they're already down there for you. So this way you can just adapt your rubric. Let's scoot it over so you can see it here. Maybe not. There we go. So, and this is for all levels, because we're just seeing where they fit on the actful, novice low, intermediate low, and you'll know where your target is. Like the state just released, I think that level 2 should be at intermediate low, etc. So that's what you're teaching, then that's where you should shoot. And so maybe if they're at novice high, then that's a B or something. And if they're supposed to be at novice high in Spanish 1, that'd be an A, right? So it just depends on where you're targeting. So those rubrics should work for all levels. So that's on there for your viewing pleasure, as well as all those theme documents I was showing you earlier, and the suggested vocabulary lists. Those are coming up, except I haven't given them to Darwin yet, but they'll get there. And then what was that? I was going to show you what a quick summary is. So we're going to start with a quick summary. It's just a unit plan, just another word for it. And this isn't something you have to do. This is just an example of one. So, because remember, you've got the freedom to move things around. I want to teach, food with regular verbs, or I want to teach going when I talk about class. So this is just an example. Why would I like to travel to such and such place? And so you've got an example of 3 interpretive tasks, whether interpreting, listening, or reading information. So you've got your presentational and your interpersonal as well. And remember, I want to reiterate the fact that these topics, the topic list I showed you earlier and all the suggested vocab, you can teach whichever topic, grammar, structure, within whatever theme that you like. You can move them around. You can do them in any order. I think earlier I might have been exchanging the words theme and topic. So theme are those general, the house, my world, who am I. Within that theme you have topics, which might include, weather or grammar structure. For example, I know we had calendar. Some people had calendar under the theme of school because they're talking about their schedule. I personally put calendar because I'm level 1 in who am I, because I know I'm going to discuss birthday. So I'm going to need to be formatting dates, so I'm going to choose to move that there. So you're very flexible where you teach your topics and structures, etc., and vocab within whatever theme. So you would make a quick summary like this based on, for example, we've got our giant themes, and at the end of that theme, that's when you're going to give that summative IPA. But the themes are very broad, who am I? So in level 1, I'm probably not going to assess that until they've already learned so many things, like date and numbers and, describing themselves, making adjectives agree, and just personality traits and adjective agreement. I said adjective agreement, but all kinds of things. So I'm going to have many formative assessments before my giant, quarter way through the semester IPA. And so every time I'm going to do a formative assessment, I would do a quick summary ahead of time. So these might last me like a week and a half. And you would decide, what topics do I want, what vocab do I want in this, and so what's my little essential question going on. Like I had one, how is a teenage experience similar in the target culture as it is to here? So we might be talking about pastimes. We're talking about likes and dislikes and things like that. So within that, we just want to start looking, I think, I told you I'd show you, there is a whole session on what quick summaries are, but basically it's just your unit plan. Just what am I going to do, what structures am I going to teach, what extra vocab might they need during this, do they need to learn how to say because, or how to compare, use some comparatives, etc. And then just kind of jot down for yourself, what are some activities that we're going to do, some tasks that we're going to do. Tasks we learned in McNamara's session as an activity, but with a purpose, not just because my teacher told me to. So you just kind of jotting your things down, and I just think this piece right here is crucial. What mode of communication are you going to assess, or are you working with during this activity? Because if it's not teaching them, if they're not interpreting any sort of text or listening to something, if they're not using their language, to have a conversation interpersonally, or not presenting their information, then is this really something that's useful for this way that we're assessing it now? Also, please don't hear me say that you have to flip everything you've ever done this year and scrap everything and start from scratch, because it doesn't have to be like that. I know I do not teach like this all the time. I teach level 1. I really struggle to stay in this target language. So for me, this is going to be balanced this year, and I'm going to say, what, on Wednesdays, our short day, because we have early release, then we are going to, I'm still going to teach grammar. Excuse the announcement that's going on in the background. So, my bad. Is now located in the second floor lobby. I apologize for that announcement. So, I'm going to choose to start half the class. They come in and I take their phones, and we're in Spanish for the entire, first portion of the class, and then we will, at some point, they'll get their phones back, and we might do more of an activity where I need to give instructions in English, and they might need to, reflect on their learning a little bit more in English. Or in Wednesdays, I'm going to stick with kind of my grammar Wednesdays, which I know maybe I shouldn't tell everyone. But, I can't do it all in 1 year. Like I said, I do have 3 boys under 4, and I can't flip this. So make little changes, work what you already do into this, but I would encourage you to look through how can I edit this activity, this favorite activity that I used to do, to make sure I'm hitting one of these modes of communication, to make sure that every activity that I have leads to this end goal of proficiency, either interpretive proficiency, presentational proficiency, because they're doing something with the language. So we're going to start with our quick summary, which we're going to develop based on what we want to teach, what topics we want to teach together in that theme. And we're going to do that before a formative assessment. And I would give these to my students too. I don't have any problem with that. At the beginning of the unit, here's your vocab for the unit, here's your quick summary for where we're going for the next week and a half. And at the end, you can check off on these can-do statements. Can you do these or not? Here were the objectives, the can-do statements that ACTFL has, and I already showed you those on the World Language website. Here they are, the can-do benchmarks. And here's where we're going. I mean, they do better when they have a roadmap where they're going anyway. So we're going to go from this quick summary, where we jot down kind of where we're going to go, and when we go to assessing it, we're going to go and make sure that we're assessing all of the modes of communication, or at least one in every activity that we do. So I think everything, if you bring it back to this, will help you. And just so I'm not saying something that we're not all familiar with, I know we hear these words a lot, but just so you remember, the interpretive mode is where your students are reading or listening to an authentic text in the language. A newscast, a podcast, even if it's just an infographic or a food label, something in the target language for native speakers, by native speakers. But it's one-way communication. There's no negotiation of meaning. I can't ask questions to the speaker because it's, I'm not there. No, they're not present in the conversation, whether I'm looking at a recording or it's just not a setting where I can talk back to them. So they could be viewing it, reading it like we talked about. So they're going to interpret the meaning. And that's probably the one we already do the best in our classroom. We do a lot of that. Presentational mode, again, one-way communication. So whether they're standing up, giving a presentation, whether they're writing or speaking, there's no interaction. It's not so spontaneous. Not an exchange of information, just presenting information. It can be rehearsed, practiced. And the presenter needs to have knowledge ahead of time of the audience's culture and language. You can read, blah, blah, blah. So when measuring proficiency, it wouldn't be, I guess, rehearsed. It would be more spontaneous. I'm glad y'all are being real with me because I'm on the fly right here. And so oftentimes on my IPA, I will make sure their presentational mode is just off the cuff. What can they actually do? Because I know if I hand it back to them and say do it at home, then it tends to be a collaborative effort between them, Google Translate, and their buddy. So I do want to know what they can do, and then often I'll hand that back with feedback and make it a harder task that they would get more polished, and that would be their project. I'll just add more to it. But they kind of have already done the pre-writing. Anyhow, interpersonal is that two-way communication. The students can't really prepare for it because they don't know what their partner is going to ask. It's actively negotiated between all parties. This is where they've got to learn that circumlocution, to talk around words they don't know. They need to make clarifications. I don't realize that word, describe to me what that is. Most importantly, you can't rehearse or practice interpersonal communication because it builds off what the other person said. So just as long as you're coming back to those and making sure that the way you're assessing on your IPA, on your assessments, hits one of these, you're probably in the right area. It's the shift we want. Yeah, those are our bells at Fulton. Can you feel bad for me for a second about that? Anyhow, honestly, we didn't get into too much because the main part of my session was work time, building an assessment. So the rest of that time is for them, and I hope this was at least somewhat helpful for you on your journey to making your classroom more friendly and getting up to date with the new push, which is totally the better way to teach. I hope you're not freaking out. I hope you feel confident, and those 4th Tuesdays we're going to really start digging into the meat of it and getting some resources that we can use. I do want to show everybody one because I'll make just a quick free plug because I really struggle with equity and assessing everyone, and I'm just doing this off the cuff, so bear with me. But look up, I think someone told me this week about Flipgrid. So not to bore you, but Flipgrid is just a way that you can basically you can basically ask your students like a prompt, a video prompt, and they can respond to you in 90 seconds. So you get to hear from each child in 90 seconds without doing that maybe in your classroom and wasting 90 seconds times 30 kids. So everyone gets a voice. They can put these nice little emojis over their faces. Now this would be for more presentational, but you could actually just ask them together, turn and talk to your partner about this, and only the half the room that's close to you does it, and the rest just chat. So when they know they're being recorded, they actually have to do it, at least for those 90 seconds. So you could just ask 2 kids to get in the same screen to help you assess their interpersonal quicker, and you can build in your own rubrics, like I'm listening for pronunciation and blank structure in this. And a really cool thing about it is it embeds right into Canvas, and so you can give assignments that way in Canvas. So just look up Flipgrid. Here it is right here, and it is free. I'm sure there is a paid version, which honestly, I plan on using this probably a lot. I'm new to it, but this sounds really exciting for me. So I'll probably end up bumping that up. But I just want to show you that one quickly because it does seem like it's going to be a great way to make sure everyone gets assessed for equal amount of time. And it's just kind of less intimidating than walking up to the teacher. You can put these things over your faces, and that we know a lot of times that lowers the effective filter. So, sorry that was random, but hope you've learned something, and good luck.